Nyanje chembor zordan hingmi zhang, lone manam chembor ngajata, bakir dar ngam santo shirmar. Stumba tek je jan la gi zhang zar, kona dogran jar nyambum gara, yonda kar zogawi kyetzar. Toni nyambo rebir namjur ba, lon jan ramjur zong, sor hande, avazan game kero nyang la jar, kanda zangbo, konam namra. Tripji gyarim chalin chunzun ban jan la mi jan lam gu shan zar, Jumesh Donjer Zombie Toy Lava Home, Sola Bossam Jin Yonder. Fai Bandim Johnny Rambo Jin, Jimcho, Garden, Maraki Shanser.
In order to free, liberate all sentient beings, let's all generate the bodhicitta. Today, in fact, this class is the beginning of the year class. According to our past experience and the past routines, we would start the first class of every year with the teaching on the victory of the Doha of victory, or Song of Victory, composed by Jigme Phuntsukul Rinpoche. That's the routine or the teaching according to Jigme Phuntsukul Rinpoche, because this particular song, this particular Vajra song or practice song could help us to dispel all obstacles and eventually help us to win victory. So I'm going to give the oral transmission today.
The corner nigga where them dun the dom trapir garzon so one carmon so on largire. Huarkunda zandang karam yama to gavarati nyang jornam, Nenjiron Kori, Semcher now, Tande Sala, Woyonshire. A champagne gives Sanjan Kurda J, Rashinzan Hali, Tujan Tor, Mangandru, Gomparandi Ingo. Kung Tori de Korandi in Jen, Tartari cancer and the Evian, Lomama, Nyamji in the Lamzo, the Yirmkura, Panzon Tatala, Yatmombi Sambal, Hupunga. Tor Habjin Rovi im Chordom Cho, Chun the Trim Ganjim Chotozon. Shirmum Tong Elon Tatak, the Horkan, the Laptin name John. The Yamnang Andrum Tamidin Jam, Ramgo, Mankro Landrumzut. Tikkun the Sanshut Trodanton, Jitransham Samba, Karlatun. Pugrandun, Jachir Jumdo Jan, Sarjantan Shepa Mangayan. Tun the Lam Mature Samazir, Guntism Gary, Tamkelam. Chudongoji Nyankayan, the Mabjid Lopzonam. Tam Dermi Gavin Joakan, Ninkori Yansa, Liturgia. Workardan Gavi, Sus, Kerr, Dirden Jander, Tiver Show. Jiban de Ravdin, Rafshon Chubden, Mayshir, Dabia Pizzer, Gola. Udachik Honlo, Shannon, Sansom, Mamtembi, yearly Garo, Gartungi, Tisa. Again, the Barton Chagala, Nieva, Zamdi, with Ngon Lutum Somepe, Chortum, Lur Lava, Gawo, Chirkur Kupchu, Kochiglo, Dar Gipit, Yerchilago.
Well, today I prepared to give a teaching on a practice of Padmasambhava. My throat is this cup is probably too big. Well, the teaching I'm going to give today is a practice composed by Jigme Ponsok Rinpoche back on September 12th, 1990s. In 1990, this is a terma that's reviewed by Jigme Ponsok Rinpoche over there at Paro Taktsang. So this is the teaching I'm going to give today. After reading it, I think that maybe today we have too many people teaching. Maybe some of you are not really prepared to listen to the Vajrayana teaching, and maybe some of you are ready. I think you should have devotion and faith in order to receive such teaching. Therefore, I am going to give this teaching in two parts. Today, I'm going to talk about this Dorje Drolo practice. I'll talk about the history. I'll talk about why the wrathful practice of Padmasambhava and why it's necessary, and how this practice could bring benefits to our work as well as our life. So I'm going to give teaching on these first, and if I do have time, then maybe we'll see accordingly of how to give the complete teaching on the sadhana itself. So today, I'm going to talk about first about the unique aspects that Tibetan Buddhism have rather than the Theravada and the Mahayana and other traditions, because there are sadhanas, there are theoretical teachings as well as dharma and pith instructions and so on. Many different teachings within the Tibetan Buddhism tradition that is quite unique. But if you're not really familiar and don't really understand, and maybe people would feel that since I don't understand, then it's really not necessary. I think it's quite important to practice, and after you get to know this practice and get to know these methods that's provided by Tibetan Buddhism, then you will have such personal understandings and insights that will help you to understand why in Tibetan Buddhism we have so many different methods. I myself personally feel that during the studying of Buddhism, there are two types of people who study Buddhism. One type is they have good capacity, they have sharp faculties, and whichever school, whichever practice they would engage in, they actually accept it really fast. And another group, although they took refuge a long time ago and joined the Sangha for many, many years. But the practice that they adopt don't really stir any ripples in their mind stream. There is no influence and impact that's made to that person. Just as how some of the masters would describe such a person is that the person and the practice, there's still a big gap between them. Although they listen to many, many teachings of the Sutrayana, of the Mahayana, of the Vajrayana teachings, but there's no change in their mind at all, in their mind stream at all. And sometimes even worse than they used to be. It's, of course, also a possibility. in your mind stream, sometimes if you really observe your mind, if you really compare how you were and how you are now, you would notice there is a difference. Maybe you were really difficult to deal with it, but now you're more easygoing, and maybe your change is quite tremendous. But some people, they have rather slow changes, and there are people who change back and forth, just like how some children are really naughty, and then they would change back and forth all the time like a naughty child. But I would suggest, doesn't matter whatever you practice in the Sutrayana, the Vajrayana, what's important is that the Dharma should make a difference to your mind stream. Even if it's just a really simple practice that you adopt, even if it's just one stanza that you contemplate, if your mind changes because of that, if that makes a difference on your mind, then this practice actually becomes a very a supreme medicine that could cure you. Other than some people spend 20 years and 30 years listen to the Dharma, but after all these years of listening, not only they don't improve themselves, they started having wrong views of the Dharma, of the Guru, and so on. So I think what's really important is not really the format or the form of the practice, but it's really important that the Dharma should change your mind. Just as the four Dharmas of Gampopa, may the Dharma change my mind, and may all the afflictions be transformed. So this is quite important. And one path instruction is that you should supplicate to the Guru, to the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas, so that you don't sidetrack on your path. Some lay practitioners and some monastics, after 5 or 10 years of practice, which is rather really short as a Buddhist, but they have a tremendous amount of change. Versus there are people who listen to Dharma for a long period of time, but there's barely any change on them. Some people even have lots of Dharma books, and the books that can be only carried by 1 or 2 elephants or 1 or 2 goats at least. And an old goat carrying all the Dharma books that you've studied. And the goat probably would be very difficult to carry and bar and whining. But all these books, yes, you have so many books, but how could these books help you? How could these books transform your mind? How could it transform your temper, transform your anger? How could it transform your personality? Even after you read so many books, if it doesn't change you at all, not only that you don't change, some people probably learned ways of slandering the Dharma because they've read it through the books. As some of the scholars do nowadays. The more they read, the more they create negative karmas for themselves. So Sutrayana or Vajrayana, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long you've studied. It doesn't matter how many Dharma you've listened to. But what's important is to take it into your heart, take it into your own mind, and transform yourself. Of course, there are people who, because they have great merits and good karma, therefore, they have really big change in a short period of time. Of course, we can't compare ourselves to Jigme Pontsog Rinpoche, who's like a wish-fulfilling jewel, who studied in the monastery for only 6 years and graduated, excelled. In fact, for us, if we study for only 6 years, we don't really, I don't think we can really compare ourselves to Jigme Pontsog Rinpoche. So, the Dharma we listened to, the Dharma we contemplated and studied, the key of doing all of those is to transform yourself, to embody the Dharma that you've studied. And this kind of Dharma listening is the most important. So, why am I giving the teaching on Padmasambhava practice, the wrathful Padmasambhava practice? It is because now we're in this dark age, the darkest of the dark age. So, in this dark age, the wrathful practice is really important. Why? As Padmasambhava aspired, as one of the prayers says, or supplication says, that Padmasambhava will liberate all sentient beings, and the activity, Dharma activity of Padmasambhava will be never interrupting and never ending. And Padmasambhava at first propagated Dharma in Tibet, but in fact, his activity is all over the world. He helps to liberate all sentient beings all over the world, and his activity is never interrupting. As all bodhisattvas and Buddhas, and especially Padmasambhava, his activity is non-interrupted. This kind of activity, maybe you would started doubting on yourself by listening to such activity and thinking such a ragged person like myself, would I be able to receive blessings from Padmasambhava? In fact, as long as you have faith, it doesn't matter what ethnics or country or skin color or religion, as long as you have faith towards Vajrayana teachings as well as Padmasambhava, then you will be able to receive the blessings of Padmasambhava. As long as you have faith, the moment you have faith, Padmasambhava is right over there with you. If you have faith, just as how Buddha aspired, that for people who have faith in the Buddha is right over there with you. So it's quite important to have faith towards Padmasambhava. Of course, everyone's faculty and capacity is very different. Some people may have a very deep devotion towards Padmasambhava, and some towards Avalokiteshvara, and some towards Manjushri. So everyone, their devotion, the object of their devotion could be different, but the devotion or the faith, once you understand what is devotion and faith, then you'll be able to give rise to faith very naturally. For example, when I just started to study the Han Buddhism, when I heard of sixth patriarch, one of the most eminent masters of Han Buddhism, I just thought he was a great master, but didn't really have a great devotion. But then, after I finished reading his autobiography and lots of writings written by him and stories, and then I started to have so much more devotions towards him. So, if you don't really have devotion at the beginning, maybe you can't really give rise to devotion and faith towards Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and great masters. And this is normal. Lots of eminent masters are not known to you. therefore, you don't really have devotion. You would probably just think, oh, this master eats and sleeps, and I too eat and sleep. So what's the difference? But then, after you get to know him a bit more, you will be able to see the difference that the eminent master has, including his discipline, his insights, and practice, and so on. And then naturally, you will start to have a devotion and faith towards those masters. So it's quite important to have the right mindfulness, to have the reasonable faith. It's quite important to have a reasonable faith. It's not like you just blindly follow advertisement or blindly to believe in the hearsays. But it's after you get to know why, you get to know what's the difference of those Buddhist bodhisattvas and Padmasambhava, then you will be able to have the reasonable faith, that's grounded faith. And whomsoever slander what you have faith towards in such a way, then you will be able to still have a very grounded faith. Maybe for myself, I'm a bit different. I grew up in a religious family. I grew up in a family where all my family members have very strong devotion towards Padmasambhava. When I was young, we don't even have any statues of Padmasambhava or pictures of Padmasambhava. So at that time, we would just find small pieces of rock and pretend this is the Padmasambhava statue, and then we would offer flowers and prostrate towards that piece of rock. So that's what we did when I was young. But then later on, I started to learn the term of Padmasambhava and practices of Padmasambhava, and that's when I started to give rise to the genuine devotion, genuine faith. So I think my kind of faith is grounded faith, and that can stand for any kind of analyze and questions. So I really hope that everyone over here should give rise to reasonable faith, to give rise to grounded faith, to give rise to the non-retrogression faith and pure faith. Rather than some people who may have very simple faith, at the beginning they would feel that, oh, this guru is absolutely wonderful. At the beginning, they wouldn't probably even call him a guru. They would call him my bodhisattva, my Buddha is here. And then they started to saying that my arhat is here, and then my good spiritual friend is here. And maybe slowly they will change to be, my enemy is here and my Mara is here. So at the beginning, it's very easy to give rise to pure and simple faith. It's very easy to have that kind of faith. Also, it's very easy to lose that kind of faith. Slowly, if you lose faith in the guru that you once had so much pure perception, and then slowly see him as a bad person who doesn't even have good virtues, then I think that's quite shameful. Okay, so why do I want to talk about Padmasambhava? Because Padmasambhava has so many practices left for us. And there are 8 kinds of manifestations of Padmasambhava. And later on, maybe if we have a good opportunity, I would like to give a teaching on the brief biography of Padmasambhava, where it talks about the 8 manifestations of Padmasambhava. So this time, I'm going to give the teaching on Dorje Drolo, that's wrathful Padmasambhava. So today I'm going to maybe talk about the sadhana. I'm not sure if we have time since I'm talking a lot right now. Well, that's the first thing about Padmasambhava. He has lots of blessings and the strength of blessings. I think people's faith towards Padmasambhava are also different based on their regions. Because when Phuntsogkar Rinpoche went to the West, lots of the Westerners, they are very faithful. They have lots of devotion towards Padmasambhava. I was really befuddled at that time. I didn't quite understand why, because at that time I understand why in the Tibetan region people have lots of faith towards Padmasambhava. But when I saw that the Westerners had also lots of faith towards Padmasambhava, I was quite surprised. A little while ago, I listened to this audio recording. It was quite a while ago. This audio recording was by the second Dorje Rinpoche. He passed away quite a long time ago, 1977, I think. Inside that audio recording, he said that I'm really happy to be here in New York, and this is the anniversary of 200th year of United States. I think the recording was made in 1977. As a great practitioner, although maybe he didn't speak much, but his language really has lots of power. So inside that audio tape, he said that he's really happy to be there on that land. And he was happy to see the unique strength of devotion towards Padmasambhava from the Americans. And as Dorje Rinpoche doesn't have any sectarian views or preference, he definitely still thinks that Padmasambhava has this unique energy to dispel obstacles for practitioners. So he encouraged all the practitioners and followers to supplicate to Padmasambhava. When I read Dorje Rinpoche's autobiography, he actually included lots of the writings on letters and mind termas, recordings of mind termas and when it happened and so on. Back at the time when Dorje Rinpoche was 13 years old, he received a mind terma of Dorje Drolo, and he kept it in secret for a long period of time. And Dorje Drolo, this wrathful Padmasambhava, is quite an important sadhana for the Westerners, and people do pay lots of attention to such practice. Nowadays, I think because in this dark age, people have so much anger and so much afflictions, and there are so many evil spirits, and there's so many dark energy, dark forces, and wrong views that influence us from such a negative way, and especially in this kind of dark age. Padmasambhava, or wrathful Padmasambhava's practice gives us special energy, just as in this dark night. The darker the night is, the brighter the Padmasambhava's light of practice is. Once you practice Padmasambhava and supplicate Padmasambhava, then it's just like you're wearing this diamond armor that cannot be defeated. So this kind of practice is really precious. Of course, there are different variations of the practices, and they all have different energies as well. Many people may question, why do you practice wrathful form of Padmasambhava? I thought Buddhism is supposed to be compassionate, because when you look at this wrathful form, don't you feel scared? Well, maybe after you study the Manjugosha Nama Sutra and the Great Magical Net, then you'll be able to understand the profound meaning behind it. In fact, just like when people look really nice normally, but when they're angry, then they don't look good anymore. Same as some of the actors and actresses when they play in the movies. That's the same, isn't it? Why Buddhism bodhisattvas manifest in such wrathful form? First of all, it's quite important to know why wrathful form. It's not their wrath is not as how the mundane beings anger, and their wrathful face is not like the angry face that mundane beings has either. In fact, their wrathful form is adornment of their particular manifestation. Through such manifestation, they would be able to tame the really fierce evil spirits and demons and maras. Sometimes when we practice the peaceful deity, in some ways, the peaceful deity could help you to pacify, could help you to increase your meditation, your discipline, and wisdom. But within a really chaotic environment, when the evil spirits and dark forces are so active, then the peaceful form doesn't work anymore. Just as when Bodhidharma came to Tibet to propagate Dharma, the wrathful local deities and all the evil spirits are all acting up, and he couldn't tame them. So that's why he invited Padmasambhava to Tibet to subdue them and eventually be able to propagate Dharma on this land. So there are definitely people who get enlightened by the peaceful form of practice, and it doesn't really demise the energy of practicing the wrathful form or wrathful practice. Is it all things are done through the peaceful ways? Some people, they have the wrathful form to complete their activity, and some people use the peaceful form to complete their activity and reach the goal. But what's the difference between Bodhisattva's wrathful form and the mundane being's wrathful form? The difference is that the Bodhisattva's wrathful form the wrathful form manifest out of compassion, because they have deep rooted compassion towards all sentient beings. But mundane beings, sometimes when they practice wrathful form, they have lots of anger. I have this vivid memory of someone from Chongqing city. When she just came, she actually came with her daughter, and she asked to receive some teachings from Jigme Phuntsukul Rinpoche, and Phuntsukul Rinpoche gave her some mantras to chant, some wrathful mantras to chant. at that time she asked for lots of teachings from Ponsok Rinpoche. At that time, it was really early, and not many people from outside of this area would come and visit. So we all really treated her very well. And later on, she said that I have completed with the wrathful form, with the wrathful practice. I think I've already completed this practice quite well, quite successfully, because now whenever I think of this particular person, I have lots of anger towards him, and I can really destroy him through the chanting the wrathful mantra. And I try to skillfully tell her that this is really not the way to practice wrathful mantra and wrathful practice. And then also I told Ponsok Rinpoche later on and said this person really doesn't have the right aspiration to practice the wrathful practice. And that's why Jigme Ponsok Rinpoche didn't really give too much teachings on the wrathful practice anymore afterwards. So, during this practice, I really hope that you don't think in the way that I am going to use the wrathful practice to harm my enemies, to harm the person who's hurting me, to harm my competitor, and to destroy the ones who I dislike. I really hope that you don't think in such a way, because in Buddhism, we don't have any practice that is based on your personal ego, that is based on your anger, your greed, and your ignorance. In any Buddhism schools, in Theravada, in Mahayana, or in Vajrayana, none of them practice with such kind of aspiration. I really hope that you can understand this. In some teachings, may sound very difficult and very confusing, but the meaning behind all those kind of wrathful words are in fact great compassion. It has inconceivable meanings behind it. Let's look at people who practice Padmasambhava, who adapted Padmasambhava practice. They actually tread on the path of practice rather smoothly without encountering too much obstacles. And there are people who don't practice Padmasambhava practice would encounter lots of obstacles. Drolo Rinpoche's autobiography, he said that when he was 14 years old, he dreamt of a Dakini. And the Dakini told him in the dream that Drolo Rinpoche should tell his uncle to practice Vajrakilaya, otherwise his uncle would die in September. At that time, Drolo Rinpoche was only 14 years old, really young. And as a young boy, he ran to his uncle and told him seriously that you should really practice Vajrakilaya, otherwise your life is in danger, or you have obstacles for your life. But his uncle had lots of doubts, and he said, "You're too young, what are you talking about?" and slapped him on the shoulder and didn't really listen to him. In September, then, an epidemic disease swept the village, and his uncle died in September. In the October, Drolo Rinpoche then dreamt of a man and a woman, and they came to him and said that you should come with me to this place that's underground. It's really beautiful. You should come with us. And Drolo Rinpoche agreed and was about to follow them. And then person whose skin is red came to Dorje Rinpoche and on a Garuda, I think. I can't quite remember. But at that time, the red person told Dorje Rinpoche and warned him not to go. Otherwise, Dorje Rinpoche would risk his life. And you may even lose your life. This is quite dangerous. Not only you shouldn't go, you should practice wrathful Padmasambhava, Dorje Drolo practice. I think the Dorje Drolo that Dorje Rinpoche received is a little bit different than the one that we're receiving today. The color is different, and then it has one face, 4 arms, and so on. So at that time, the person in red said that you should chant Hum so that it could dispel the obstacles in your life. When he was chanting Hum, 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 the woman and the man in his dream disappeared. And when he woke up, he knew that if he didn't practice Dorje Drolo, then he would have probably also died in that epidemic disease. Dorje Rinpoche passed away in around 63 or 64, and he said that if he didn't practice Dorje Drolo, he would have probably passed away much earlier. The Sangha, we hear people who constantly chant Hum, Hum, Hum. A few female Sangha really enjoyed chanting Hum, Hum, Hum. They probably don't even understand what it means. It's okay still if you don't understand the mantra, but the strength, the energy of it is still quite powerful. So, if we practice Padmasambhava like such, is quite important. It's been almost 30 years since Ponsok Rinpoche reviewed this terma. Why am I teaching this particular terma in such an expansive way? Is because I feel that life is impermanent. And I remember in Lira Blamba's teachings, he actually also has a cycle of teaching on Dorje Drolo. At the back of it, it says, I can't quite remember the original text, but what it means is that when Lira Lampa reviewed the practice, the terma practice at that time, that particular teaching on Dorje Drolo and the practice of Padmasambhava is not as popular, but in his second reincarnation, which is Jigme Ponsok Rinpoche, then the practice of Padmasambhava will be vastly expanded. So now we can see that Padmasambhava is so well received in mainland China, in the West, and in every part of the world. So for people who have faith, who don't have wrong view, I'm going to give you this teaching. And for people who don't have faith, who don't really want to receive this teaching, it's okay. Some people, there are only a few people who received a very pure teaching from Ponsok Rinpoche directly of this terma. At that time, there's Lama Sodun and Lama Ripa and Lama Mento and myself. We received this teaching directly at the time of revealing this terma, when Ponsok Rinpoche revealed this terma. I'm going to briefly give you, tell you the story of how Phuntsok Rinpoche reviewed this terma at that time. I'm currently writing a book, a memoir, and some people may feel that this memoir is my autobiography. In fact, this is not. This is just a recording of my journey with Phuntsok Rinpoche to Nepal, to Bhutan, to India, and Hong Kong, and then a few monasteries around Chengdu. The whole trip was about 6 months and 3 days. I think I showed you this really ripped calendar at that time, and some pages of my diary, and based on those and my memory, I am writing this memoir. So the whole process of revealing the terma and going to Bhutan and all that, I wrote a little bit about that. So I'm going to talk about this. At that time, when Phuntsok Rinpoche went to Bhutan, in fact, at the beginning, we planned to stay in Namdruling in South India. But Sankhe Wangshu, the previous king of Bhutan, and Ajay Galsan, who is the queen of Bhutan at the time, they requested Phuntsok Rinpoche to give them teachings in Bhutan. That's right around the time when Phuntsok Rinpoche was teaching the 7-line prayer of Padmasambhava, because they listened to Drolo Rinpoche's advice of inviting Phuntsok Rinpoche. Therefore, we went there. It is a prophet. It was written in a prophet that if someone could discover, if Phuntsok Rinpoche could reveal this terma, then all the turmoil that was happening around the time in Bhutan would be pacified. So at that time, we went from South India, Calcutta, to Nepal, to Bhutan. We first met Drolo Rinpoche, and then on September 12, 1990, we then went to Taktsang. I, in fact, wrote very specifically of where we went in the morning, where we went in the afternoon, how long we took the airplane, and so on. So now when I read my diary that was written 30 years ago, I felt it was really sweet to remember. Anyhow, Taktsang, the monastery, is on really tall, on the cliff of the mountain that's really tall, about 3,000 meters high in altitude. So lots of young people, about a few dozens of young people accompanied us, the whole group of us, and the young people were carrying, chairmen carrying the sedan chair where Phuntsok Rinpoche was sitting on it. I had profound memories of this whole journey, because at that time we saw these beautiful cedars and beautiful flowers and meadows. I think at that time it was just as a true beautiful summer, because in September it would be fall for Tibet. Anyhow, normally people would take only 2 hours or so to go to monastery of Taktsang, but we took about 3 or 4 hours. But since we are taking a pilgrimage, we're very much different than the travelers, where the tourists who are taking photos everywhere and so on. But Pongsu Rinpoche is completely different. He was murmuring mantras, and he was silently practicing the whole way. And he probably did a few practices along the way. I think for people who went there, they probably know that the whole road is really quite difficult to climb and have steep slopes and so on. So Taktsang is this monastery that's situated on the cliff, halfway on the mountains. Along the way, there are many different caves and where great Mahasiddhas practiced in, especially Padmasambhava. This is the place where Padmasambhava subdued the non-humans and evil spirits. This is and his manifestation of enlightenment and his last stop before he went to the Rakshas state. And he left lots of treasures over there in Taktsang. So in many supplications, they all wrote Paro Taktsang as part of or included as part of the supplication for Padmasambhava. It seems like I'm advertising for Bhutan. I'm sure lots of you want to go now. When Pongsu Rinpoche was almost at Taktsang, across from this monastery, there is a small cave, and at that time, I think I was quite naughty. I was taking a photo behind him. Sometimes I do that. This year, when I was writing the memoir, I was quite grateful to my beaten-up camera that I had at that time, because I found many precious photos. I think I had still a few more really precious photos of that time. I have to go dig in and find them out. Then Pongsu Rinpoche asked us to leave him alone and scatter around in other places. And Pongsu Rinpoche was by himself at that time. So we put this golden futon right underneath, golden mat underneath Pongsu Rinpoche so that he can sit on it. And then he asked us to give a kata to that cave. Not quite sure if it's an offering for the earth terma, to view the earth terma. Because at that time, Pongsu Rinpoche was on himself, and the rest of us were a little much further away. At that time, we were all very hungry, and we didn't really eat anything. And then we heard this coughing sound made by Pongsu Rinpoche, so we then went to him. So we went there, and then Pongsu Rinpoche asked us to make aspiration and chant mantras and so on first before eating anything. Usually tourists cannot stay overnight at Taktsang, but we stayed over there for 2 nights. I think it's still the same, but at that time we had special permissions from the king and the queen, and Pongsu Rinpoche as well as us, his attendants, stayed overnight over there. So at that time, Pongsu Rinpoche then chanted out this particular sadhana. He chanted it really fast. And then I wrote them down really fast. And at that time, when he finished chanting the sadhana, he looks very much relaxed and more normal, rather than when he was chanting all those stanzas of the sadhana. He was rather hasty. I can't remember whether if we received an empowerment at that time. I can't quite clearly remember at that time, but I remember that he asked us to chant Home, the letter Home, mantra Home, for 10,000 to 100,000 times. So since he requests us to do so, we finished practicing this home chanting within 2 days. And we didn't really speak much or do anything else over there other than chanting the mantra. In this dark age, just as Liralamba's, in this dark age, the extensive sadhana of Dorje Drolo composed by or reviewed by Liralamba would be very difficult for beings to practice because it takes at least one whole day to practice this whole sadhana. But this sadhana is rather condensed and really short. So this is more towards this dark age, and this is more suitable for this dark age. The wrathful form of Padmasambhava is a bit different. Dorje Drolo. Dorje is Vajra, and Drolo is the one who is strength, who has the strength, great strength. So Drolo also means that this means the one who received the highest realization. This kind of supplication, I think, to all of you is very well known to most people in Tibet. Everyone could recite it. In fact, I think really in our life at this time, not everything can be accomplished through the peaceful way. Sometimes it's the external phenomena that creates lots of disturbance, and sometimes it's afflictions, lots of anger, lots of suffering. It's quite great. Once you have the anger, that kind of anger sometimes cannot even be tamed by Dorje Drolo or Padmasambhava himself if they were here right in front of your face. Some people, when they have jealousy or greed, you would say, wow, there are people who have such intense greed and jealousy. And sometimes it's fear. In this dark age, the suffering, affliction changes from this world is so great, much, much greater than what we had before. This 21st century, from the internal world of all sentient beings and external world of the sentient beings, everything changes so fast. The mentality of everyone changes so fast and so swift. Today you're good and tomorrow you're bad. Today you're friends, tomorrow you're enemies. And today you are all glued up together, and tomorrow you don't want to even be within 10 feet within each other. So things change so fast. Today you may be a wealthy man. And tomorrow you may become a beggar, a penniless beggar. This is the characteristic of 21st century. All the changes, all these kind of world, the quality of this world is so untrustworthy. So the best medicine to cure all of such sufferings is to practice wrathful Padmasambhava, is to supplicate Padmasambhava, and to practice wrathful deities, especially if you have devotion towards wrathful practice. And if someone, if some of you who are listening to it think that, oh, he's just seriously kidding right now, then if you feel this way, I really can't do much, can I? Because from my point of view, from my personal faith and my value, and all of my practice is completely rely upon Guru Rinpoche, relying upon Padmasambhava. Lots of Westerns, I really like them because they, at first, have different faiths. And then they still have a lot of faith towards Padmasambhava. Maybe it's because of the great blessings from their guru or Padmasambhava. So, with such kind of faith and devotion, all the sufferings as I quoted, at the darkest night of the world, at the darkest age and darkest night of the world, the blessings and strength of Padmasambhava is the bright moon. The darker it is, the brighter the strength of Padmasambhava will be radiating. So, along with the dark energies and all the turbulence and all the evil spirits creating chaos, I think if you supplicate to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and especially if the compassionate form of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cannot tame all of those those kind of evil forces, then Padmasambhava could cut through all the wrong views and help you to realize the nature of your mind, the non-duality of emptiness and luminosity. And with his blessings and energy, such brightness will dispel the darkness of ignorance that you have. I'm not propagating, promoting Padmasambhava because I personally have a good relationship with Padmasambhava, but I personally feel that I received such great blessings from Bhutan, and I think at that time I had a really good relationship with the protector Tirmarpo. I'm not lying or anything, but I can tell you that I cried in the cave of Padmasambhava for a very long period of time. I think now lots of lay practitioners also cry. They don't even need to wash their face, and they can use their tears to self-wash their face. So I'm just joking, but the point is that I received in person from Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche from such a close way of receiving such terma. I think the time is running out, so maybe the particular sadhana I'll be giving it tomorrow. Originally, I didn't really have such plan of giving the teaching on the sadhana, but if you are really interested in Vajrayana, if you have faith to Vajrayana practice, then you can listen to this to tomorrow's class. But for people who are not ready to enter into Vajrayana, who don't want to or don't like Vajrayana practice, then don't attend tomorrow's class. Originally, tomorrow we don't really have a class. Day after tomorrow, we will study the a supplication to Padmasambhava that's composed by Phuntsogren Rinpoche at the lake of Padmasambhava. So today, I think just giving this a sadhana, it's so openly, it's probably not proper. Therefore, I'm not going to give this the teaching on this today. So I'm going to only talk about the wrathful practice and give some brief explanations on it, as well as oral transmission of the Song of Victory composed by Jigme Phuntsogren Rinpoche. So the point is that the wrathful form is a manifestation out of a great compassion of bodhisattvas. So tomorrow, if you don't want to take refuge, if you don't want to study Vajrayana, if you don't have a good feeling about Vajrayana, then don't attend tomorrow's class. So maybe tomorrow we will give this teaching. It's a very special occasion. Usually, it's not. The teaching is not given publicly. On Thursday, the supplication is an open class, and Friday is also an open class. And the week after, we are going to start learning the Sigalaka Sutra. I think this particular sutra is very suitable for lay practitioners. Lots of good teachings on how to implementing Buddhism into your daily life as lay practitioners. The opportunity of listening to Dharma is quite rare. Therefore, I really hope that you should cherish such opportunity, because at this moment you can listen to Dharma, but things change very quickly. It could be the change that comes from the world, or the change of your afflictions, of your emotions. Therefore, you should really contemplate about impermanence, especially when it comes to the opportunity of listening to the Dharma. So, I simply explained or giving the introductory of this particular wrathful practice of Padmasambhava. And today we'll stop here. Thank you.